I think this is an unnecessary crash out from Stephen A. It's not, even if LeBron is crashing out also, it's not going to be looked at that way. They've had to check Stephen A a few times behind the scenes over how you are handling the children of dads that you know, dads that you're seeing. It ain't just Kyrie. It's a reoccurring thing.
All right, so y'all know most of the celebrity world is talking about this back and forth with LeBron James and Stephen A. Smith. So we had to see what the Podfather Joe Budden had to say about this. You better like the video. You better subscribe. Let's check it out.
All right, let's talk about some racism for a little bit. Everybody is kicking LeBron James' ass for going to Pat McAfee's show and not a black person's show. And this LeBron versus Stephen A. Smith thing is ongoing. Yeah. It doesn't seem like it's going to end. Heated up the other day when LeBron did Pat McAfee's show when the Lakers played Indiana the other day. Pat McAfee's show comes on immediately after First Take. Yeah. Well. After First Take. So this was LeBron just getting his shit off, and boy, did he get his shit off about everything. I'm talking his relationship with Michael Jordan. He went back to the draft being rigged.
You could tell from the way that the hat was sitting that he was on bullshit.
He was on total bullshit.
He had that shit low like this.
That nigga sent shots at Brian Windhurst, Stephen A. Smith, just all of sports media basically. He went crazy. And there are conflicting feelings on it. Some people love it, some people hate it. Stephen A. then replied on his show. It just doesn't look like this thing is going to end anytime soon. LeBron says Stephen A. has been on a Taylor Swift-like tour run talking about their encounter, which started with Stephen A. saying, I had no intention of ever talking about this encounter up until I heard the Richard Jefferson leak. Then he had so much to say about it. So they just been going back and forth.
Are you standing on the side that Stephen A. should stop because he was the antagonizer in the situation?
I think they both should stop.
Yeah, but you're speaking more from, like, I understand where LeBron's coming from. That's his son. Stephen A. been antagonizing the situation. So as you,
I think for Stephen A. to say, yo, I was never going to talk about this, but then I heard the Richard Jefferson clip. I do agree that he's been on a run talking about it. On the flip side, I understand going on a run to talk about the biggest guy in the world.
Let's not do the flip side. Let's talk to you as a person, as a fan of these individuals, as a supporter.
I think this is an unnecessary crash out from Stephen A. It's not, even if LeBron is crashing out also, it's not going to be looked at that way.
It will be by some people because now there's a lot of people that take LeBron out that conversation now because of this.
I think a lot of people look at it as an unnecessary.
It's on both sides.
Not me. I'm just talking about from what I'm hearing. I hear a lot of people saying it's an unnecessary crash out from LeBron.
I say it's both.
I've seen that too.
I've seen a lot of people saying like LeBron has crashed out unnecessarily because a man is doing his journalistic job.
Yeah, but you can't tell people how to father.
I'm not disagreeing.
That's where Joe's
That's
going.
where
Joe, we're not talking about who's right or wrong between the people. We talking about the perception of the onlooker to the events that are going on.
But perception goes out the window for me when somebody's fathering.
I'm not disagreeing.
If I'm fathering, my concern is not how I'm being looked at.
That's true.
I don't think Stephen A. is as invested or should be as invested as LeBron is for how he felt about what was said.
I'm talking about the people saying LeBron is crashing out. A lot of people are saying, yo, he's crashing out. But he never disrespected your son. He's saying, yo, he's crashed. A lot of people. I'm not in that. I'm saying from outside, a lot of people are saying, yo, dog, he's bugging the fuck out.
But then a lot of people also will hear the response to that is, and rightfully so.
Yeah, because I don't even need to get to a lot of people.
Saying?
Me, as a dad listening, I understand what LeBron was trying to say more than whatever the fuck point Stephen A. was trying to get off. Like for Stephen A., hey, let's stay with the me and Drake example. When I was talking about Drake responded and said, sounds personal. It sounds like it's more than the music. This shit that Stephen A. is and has been saying, LeBron is saying, this is not just basketball. This is more than basketball, and that's where I have a problem.
And that's what they're checking them. Hey, whatever it is, keep my son out of it, though.
Yeah.
Whatever we got, it is more than basketball. You're not bringing my son into this. Whatever it is me and you dealing with, we'll deal with that.
I was saying what Stephen A. is saying. Hey, I'm getting this from the lyrics. It's in the music. I'm unpacking the music, so that should mean I should be able to talk about it. The fans was like, I don't know about that. Keep it music.
Let me.
Not music. If you talk about the girls, I don't care about what he says out. It's the same shit.
Let me extend you grace because when it came to talking about Drake's son, you didn't want to touch it. The
I'm
music
not
or
talking about
anything.
nobody's son.
You didn't want to do it. So,
I'm not talking about nobody's kids.
Yeah, I'm not talking about nobody's
I'm not talking about
kids.
nobody's
You know what I mean? So.
Not my place, it's not my business. I would hope niggas would extend that same
Courtesy.
to me. And if you don't, it let me know how you want it when it comes to people's kids. That don't mean I'm gonna go fucking spin the block and kill you.
Yeah.
It just lets me know
Got
where
it.
you stand on kids.
So no, I'm just saying I see how you're approaching the situation. So I see what you expect from a guy like
This
Stephen
is
A.
not, for me, this is not Stephen A's first time going through this with somebody's dad. It ain't.
But that don't necessarily.
He has a track record of going through this, maybe not to this degree, with somebody's dad. I was on Kyrie's dad's side last time they did this.
Me too.
When niggas had to step to him and say, hey, the people that raised you raised him. And out of respect for us, when you talk about us, you talking about like
When you talk about him,
They've
you
had
talking
to
about
check
them.
Stephen A. a few times behind the scenes over how you are handling the children of dads that you know, dads that you're seeing. It ain't just Kyrie. It ain't just. It's a reoccurring thing.
Are you saying that Stephen A. is more professional or should be more professional than having to take the routes that he's taking when speaking or approaching the topic? Are you saying that you should be more?
I think that
you should be clever enough to approach a topic in a different way than taking these clickbait.
Yes and no. Stephen A. is him in his field. Don't ever misconstrue what I'm saying.
No, he is.
He's him in his field.
Amazing.
He's also him at a company. And you have to know when your company is now moving in a different direction. It's like when the NBA hired analytics people. And they started listening to the analytics people a little more than the basketball people. The same thing you could tell if you got eyes in the brain that's happening at ESPN. Where they rather show you, there's a meme going around, where they rather show you Stephen A. speak to Kai Cenat about who's better, LeBron and Jordan. Everything is cowboy. Like there are no real conversations about Houston's 10-game winning streak, the turnaround that Detroit has had. Like there's so many dope stories to have. That's not what ESPN is doing.
Yeah, no, they're doing content-y shit.
ESPN is doing content-y,
Headline, clickbaity.
clickbaity, headline, and when you do that,
It's 3 teams.
You're gonna find your people to fucking harp on. I've done it before.
Stay here though. Look, stay there.
I've done it before.
Stay where you at.
So some of those people, Jason Tatum, I don't think Jason Tatum deserved none of that shit that they did, but that was the hot story with Steve Kerr and the Dream Team. Bronny, I don't think he deserved any of that, but that's the hot story. There's a bunch of these stories.
I got it. I'm listening.
So yeah, when these go out, if we see each other and know each other, back to my J1 working here point, right? Like when I called you and said, hey, that conversation, yeah, it was cool on some pod shit, but when we know somebody's dad,
You did, yes.
right? Like it's just like a respect thing when you know and see a dad.
Yes.
That's my only point in this, and they just keep it going. Listen, we kicking past the coverage. One of the best basketball players in the world went to one of the biggest media spots in Indiana and kicked the back end of one of the biggest media people in the world.
Yeah, and threw a couple other shots in the meantime.
Yeah, yo, he fired at Brian Windhurst. He said, yo, Brian Windhurst is running around acting like my best friend. Nigga's a weirdo. Excuse me. Is a weird, my gird. And that nigga's a weirdo, been a weirdo. That shit's weird. All these sports niggas is weirdos. There's a big divide going on between the athletes and the commentators that they're taking the jobs from.
The athletes are starting to get a voice.
And they're starting to get, the athletes are starting to get eyes and look at what the fuck Tom Brady is being paid by CBS and what the fuck the Kelsey brothers is being paid by Amazon. We're getting a voice. The athletes got brains and eyes, and we might have got robbed in our career, but now we see this second window, and we gonna get to it. So, you know what that means? Fuck the Elliott Wilsons of the basketball world. That's what's happening.
I think that's for some.
Shout out to Elliott Wilson.
No, I think
just use that as an example.
I think that's true for some. I think some of the other ones is this shit has been going on forever. We never was able to respond when such and such would write a shitty article about us back in the day. Now we have a voice, and our voice is being heard. So now we could contest some of that shit. That's what I look at it as. Like, yo, dog, I remember that art. Them niggas take that shit personally. I remember you wrote an article about me 2 years ago, and you said all of this shit, and I remember it. So now it's up for you.
That's the other part of the LeBron shit that he addressed on Pat McAfee. He said, yeah, the conversation is about him and Bronny. About Bronny, but this is about how you can and can't speak about players and the game that we love. Y'all have killed this shit. So yeah, we can talk about Bronny, but Is that the best and most effective way to talk about the game that each one of us love? The way y'all have handled it in recent years have us in this spot, and it's shitty. And as the leader of player voices and the league, and I'm about to get my own team, there's nobody else equipped to say this but me.
I agree with
But
that.
we're not going to have the conversation because we're talking about my son. But we have a problem with how y'all speak to all players. He referenced the Philadelphia beat writer that came in the locker room and said that shit about Joel Embiid's brother that lost his life. Like, he's having deep conversations
I
up
agree,
there.
and I agree with all of that.
Some of that is really, really, really important. Some of it is petty bullshit.
Nah.
But
He's
some
getting
of
his
it
shit
is
off in it.
really
But he's
important.
right.
Yeah.
He's right.
He's
in
just
that.
getting his shit off
He's
in
a
there, too.
and that's what I said, y'all. He's 1,000% right in that. And I think now that these niggas got their own voice, I make mad money. I don't give a fuck no more. I make $400 million. I can say what I want. Whereas the nigga that was making 1.5, they had to eat that.
Right.
It came along with the game. You know what I'm saying? Now I can address some of you motherfuckers because I'm seeing y'all personally. You know what I mean? It's the same writers.
Right.
It's the same writers all the time.
And now some of you sport reporter niggas is the ops if I'm clutch and I represent the athlete podcasters that are gonna go try to get the big bag from all the companies that y'all are getting it for. They fighting over different shit than they saying.
Yeah, true.
That's a fact.
I agree with you.
I agree with it.
Because if you clutch and you getting ad money, you can really. It's Drake.
Yeah, I'm going up there to
Nigga,
pitch
Drake could be
Draymond
like, yo,
Green for
nigga.
everything y'all pitching Stephen A for. I'm going to pitch Draymond
True.
Green.
True. It's a different conversation now. They taking the
It's
the
deep
power.
and it's fun.
They
It's
taking
deep.
the power.
Yeah,
They taking the power.
It is deep and it's fun to watch. It is.
They taking the power.
There's a real intricate chess game being played
behind the scenes
in front of us.
For sure.
True. Oh, Doritos.
That's what I got. Shout out to all parties.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
Shout out to all parties.
Yes, sir.
I agree.
All right, y'all. So it's a lot to get to with this topic. I took my notes. Let's get straight into it. Is LeBron doing too much? I think there's a lot of people who basically feel like this is a breath of fresh air for LeBron James, somebody who's always seemed like he was putting on some act his whole career. A lot of people didn't like The Shop. Remember when he had that HBO show, The Shop? It felt like it was too scripted. You know, he did the interview with Drake. You know, it's like, how real is this? How authentic is this LeBron James? People thought that wasn't no real barbershop. And then you take it to LeBron in these other moments in his career. He loses a playoff series and he pops out with an injury and people are like, hold on, where you get this injury from? Is this you trying to make an excuse for losing? Just like a lot of people don't like the decision. A lot of people don't like the flopping. A lot of people don't like he said, I'm a GOAT. I knew I was the GOAT when I came back on the Golden State Warriors. So I think a lot of people had this perception of LeBron always being fake, always putting on some show, even with the way he raises his children. I noticed a while ago when I used to see his kids at the Lakers games, I feel like he's taught them how to react on camera. Don't act a certain way on camera. Don't be laughing and joking a certain, don't make yourself look a certain way when you're on camera. Even when his son was on Casanat stream, I noticed Bryce didn't really want to laugh too much on the camera. So everything about his life and his career, it always seems like, maybe there was some extra thinking to what we're seeing on screen. Is it ever really a live reaction from LeBron? And now it's almost like LeBron has let his hair down. LeBron, he goes on Pat McAfee and he's cussing. And I've heard LeBron cuss on The Shop, but this was like real cursing about real topics, about things that people talk about things that people want to know. And look, a lot of y'all had to let me know that Pat McAfee is the competition of Stephen A, even though they're both on ESPN, but Pat McAfee is like this new school of commentary. He's wearing t-shirts. He's cursing. He's not wearing suits, And I just thought, wow, that was petty of LeBron to go to Pat McAfee to kind of jab at Stephen A little deeper, like, yeah, bro, I'm going to give this other guy who you kind of competing with, I'm going to give him this crazy interview. And so I saw when Joe was comparing his situation with Drake to Stephen A's situation with LeBron James. I don't think there's any comparison because, number one, there's a backstory to Joe's beef with Drake. From my understanding, it started over a female, and y'all been beefing for 10 years ever since. So when you are talking about him and some rap lyrics over a 24-year-old girl, and that's something you usually don't do, you don't lean into every weird lyric that any other artist has ever said, because it's a lot of lyrics I've heard that could be broken down. You don't do that. You specifically chose that Drake lyric to what? To try to paint Drake in some kind of weird light. And see, that was another part of Kendrick's ammunition towards Drake. And that's why a lot of people felt like Kendrick and Joe Budden was kind of working in cahoots, because you can look at a lot of stuff that Joe said and then take it back to some of the stuff Kendrick was rapping about and say, hold on, was he talking to Joe or was he just listening to the podcast? But regardless, we know you and Drake was beefing, and I think it was about Tahiri. I'll just say it. I don't know for sure, but that's what the streets always say. They say somehow Tahiri got out there to Drake, and they said Joe has been upset ever since. That's what the streets say. I can't prove it, but that's totally different from LeBron James being a basketball player and Stephen A being a commentator, both of them doing their jobs and people trying to figure out who's getting too personal. Now, the other day when Stephen A started talking about Kobe's funeral, red flag. But they've both kind of held up some red flags. And I think that's, up to, perception and what the fans think. But I just feel like it's black and white with Drake and Joe. They got an issue. It's personal. It is what it is. Now, let's move on to this ESPN clickbaity thing. Yes. Does ESPN do clickbait stuff? I agree. But everything that they said ESPN doesn't talk about, I've heard them talk about. Now, are they shining a constant light on all of these different teams in the NBA being better? I'm from Detroit. The Pistons are playing well. Cunningham is playing well. Have they just constantly put Cunningham on ESPN every day? No. But it's been talked about plenty of times. Just like the West and how it's up for grabs and so many teams are good. It's talked about every day. And y'all know when the playoffs get closer, we start to have conversations about matchups and should this team kind of drop so they can avoid playing this team and who needs to avoid OKC. And in those conversations, we talk about all of that. We talk about how good these teams are. I've heard this conversation be made on ESPN for the last 2 weeks. And a lot of people just really feel like OKC isn't getting the respect they deserve. But I don't really think a lot of these people constantly watch sports television. I think they just kind of watch some of the clips and the highlights. But OKC is talked about a lot. I've seen the Pistons talked about a fair good amount this year. The better Cunningham plays, the more people are talking about the Pistons. So yes, is it some clickbait? I agree. But is it always that type of content? No. Just like this narrative that nobody has ever said anything good about Bronny up there. I've seen them praise Bronny every time he played well. And I've also seen them criticize him when he didn't. He's the only player getting highlights played of him in the G League. Y'all need to stop it. Now, the last thing is, it is a beef going on with these athletes and these commentators. But this has been going on for a while. The commentators been hating on the athletes. And I see it kind of quieting down now because for a while, I remember specifically guys like Rob Parker, if y'all are familiar with him, and a lot of other guys at Fox, they used to constantly bring up how, these athletes when they're interviewing each other, they throw these softball questions, which I agree with. There's never any pushback. They always feel like they're right. They're always blaming the media. And look, some of that is right, but at the same time, I did think a lot of it was you're letting these guys come in. They don't have any backgrounds in journalism. They didn't go to school for it. They're just coming in because they were players and they put on a suit and they can speak somewhat well, and you put them in front of a microphone and now they're taking our jobs. It did kind of feel like they're taking our jobs. And there's some really good sports commentators. I mean, ex-athletes commentators, but there's some bad ones too. And I think over time, the bad ones kind of get weeded out. But yeah, I keep watching ESPN. I'm seeing Carlos Boozer pop up. I'm seeing T-Mac pop up. I'm seeing all of these old athletes popping up. And I keep thinking, are we going to get to a point where we just want to hear ex-athletes talk about these sports instead of commentators? Are the commentators going to fall back one day and kind of just be relegated to, I don't know, press or articles and things of that nature, writing, maybe not being on camera anymore? I think some of the top guys like Stephen A, they'll shine. The Pat McAfees, they'll shine. But some of these other guys that we really don't need to hear from, like, do we really need to see Shams on TV? These guys who are known from Twitter and posting stuff. Not to say Shams doesn't deserve that opportunity, but we might start to see guys like him not get the opportunity to be on TV. And we'll have the shock jocks like Stephen A. Smith and a bunch of ex-athletes, and that'll be it. Oh, and don't forget, you got to have a pretty girl to be the moderator, okay? So, yeah, it's been a battle going on for quite some time. And, yeah, I can tell some of the journalists, commentators, they've been hating. Now, is it rightfully so? Maybe. But at the end of the day, some of them aren't as entertaining as some of these new athletes. It is what it is. I mean, these ex-athletes, my bad. So y'all let me know what y'all think about this. Like the video and subscribe. I will see y'all next time. Peace.